Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. This is the Level 1 presentation for Lesson 9. Today, it's all about flying rainbow lasagna and DNA. I'm crouched down in this strange position, and today's date is February 20th, because I want to show you this painting. And, a lot of the students catch the archive here. I'm sorry, I'm walking through the camera, too. Here, let me show you what I got going on here. So if you weren't here, in order to be able to see this in between, I usually do like a little presentation right at the beginning. Let me move myself out of the way so that you can see. Lighting is terrible. Let's get this lighting better. Can you see that a little bit better? There you go. So yeah, this painting is basically 5 overlapping visual octaves, and this will relate more to lesson 2. But basically what I've got visible here is red, red, orange, red, green, yellow. And this is octaves that are in the size of 40, with red being 48, 32, 24, 16, and 12. I hope I got everything right in there. And all of the harmonic overtones that are available in there. So I don't know if you can see, like this one's just going to be like a complex weaving of many of these overlapping circles. And I'll just keep you apprised of this situation as things go. But I know that some people were interested, so I just wanted to give you an opportunity to see that. Okay, cool. Moving this aside and getting going with the lessons of the day. And we have a little chair right next to me for Miss Boss. Got to and rearrange my lighting now so that you can see my face better. Today is the day that you learn all about how your DNA actually transforms into flying rainbow lasagna. Hello, Joelle. Lovely to see you. You're not late. You're perfectly on time. This is lesson 9. So also, welcome. I have a couple of new students. I don't know if you can tell I'm so excited today. I have a couple of new students who just joined on in Teachable. And this is kind of like if you have already had several weeks of a TV series, or we've gone through the first hour of a movie, and you're tuning in to this episode or this moment in the movie right now, and it might be something very dramatic, like the guy gets the girl, or like there's a big explosion or something like that. Today's that episode. You are going to learn all about the structure of DNA, and how that relates to flying rainbow lasagna, and how DNA relates to time, and how transforming into a flying rainbow lasagna gives you an additional degree of freedom. So this lesson today is not necessarily how to do the dance. I do have a presentation that is all about that. This is more of a what, not a how to, but a what lesson. What is actually happening? What am I talking about? What is this? Because I've done a lot of establishing basic terms, telling you all about this shape, the shape of chakras, the shape of the source, the convergence point here, the idea of this being comprised of time, the proportions of the circles that make up the chakras or energy centers of your body, your basic energetic anatomy, right? Like we've done a lot. This is like, I'm so appreciative of all the work that everybody puts in being focused and understanding those foundation concepts, because now, like, that's all the hard stuff. Now we actually get to start to play some melodies. So let me get my magic trackpad. Sorry, I don't have that all set. You kind of see me at a weird angle here. My magic wand, my magic trackpad, and I was joking with everyone too. Today's going to be a very special day. I have pipe cleaners. Pipe cleaners are here, and I'll make sure that everybody's muted, and remind me, and I'll check the chat too, if anybody pops in and they aren't muted. So first, let me just go through. Well, okay, this is all about what DNA is actually shaped like. I have a whole playlist called Supplemental Homework Videos, and in the Supplemental Homework Videos, there are the original YouTube videos that I took some of these screenshots that I will share with you from which I took these screenshots. So everybody, if I haven't shared the playlist that is called Supplemental Homework Videos, I will do so. And the ones that you want to, you can watch all of them, but the ones that relate to this lesson are the one that is about supercoiling, and there's a couple of others that are about methylation and RNA messengers on DNA. And I chose those videos intentionally because they are more science-based, more scientific. Like, we're trying to be really accurate here, not just painting in broad strokes. At this point, it's necessary. It's just like, oh, you see the guitar back there. It's just like if you're starting to learn learn to play the guitar. This isn't just a little ukulele. This is the guitar with all the strings. You're learning everything, how to do this. So we need to learn DNA properly in order to be able to even talk about how lasagna relates to it properly. So starting off with, I know I have so many pictures over here, and they're all like arranged front to back. Okay. Wait. Thank you for bearing with me while I arrange these so that you can see them and make my face bigger. Oops. Oh, I don't know what that just did. That wasn't what I wanted. Oh, what do? Now I don't know what's going on. I have to stop share. Sorry. Oh my goodness. All right. I don't know what happened with that piece and why that picture became so incredibly giant. Sorry. Let me make that smaller. Boy, oh boy. And let me rearrange these better for you now. Okay. Good. That's what I'm doing wrong. Okay. Good. Okay. I know, I don't mean to be boring you with this. So this is the first image that I wanted to pull up. This is DNA being supercoiled. So the first thing to understand is that although science or science class, you know, way back in high school or whenever you might have learned about DNA, might have originally presented DNA as if it is, here I'll just draw like an X-shaped chromosome. Here's like a big swirled up, you know, a conglomeration of genes. An X or a Y-shaped chromosome is often how DNA is shown and presented to us. But DNA only achieves the chromosome shape during a very limited portion of the cellular lifespan. So for a large portion of the cell's lifespan, the DNA within the nucleus is unfurled. So this chromosome shape here, that's like if you have thread or yarn that is knitted into a sweater. Now let me draw where you can kind of see properly. Here's the outer cell membrane. Here's the nuclear membrane. And let's choose a different color. Let's make like this bright blue. This bright blue, these squiggles that I'm doing in there, that is DNA when it is unfurled. So when it's in this chromosome shape, that's like a sweater. If you pull all the thread out of a sweater, the thread is still there. It's still the same type of woolen thread, but you have taken all of the loops out, and now it's just a big ball of yarn. That's what you have in this instance. That is called chromatin. I'll write it for you. And chromatin is literally a bunch of vibrating strings of your DNA. So big, huge emphasis here. Your body is a musical instrument, and they use that as a, not an analogy, but a literal example all the time. Just like a piano has vibrating strings. If it's an actual piano with vibrating strings in it, and let me get this, I have this all the way back here, but I want to bring it forward for today. Borrowed a friend's guitar. It is actually made of vibrating strings. Here's a vibrating string. I'm going to make a noise. There you go. It makes a noise. So we are made of vibrating strings of DNA. And so the DNA is only knitted together into the genetic sweater during a minimal portion of its life. And so when it is unfurled into chromatin, DNA also has behavior. So you can see me here in the little thumbnail. It doesn't just sit there like a loop or like a hula hoop. It does stuff. And I will begin to explain to you and describe the motivation for that behavior. And the behavior is like a dance. So, you know, do-si-dos, the DNA is doing many different types of movements. First, let me talk about supercoiling. And then I will be able to more effectively tell you why it is moving. This image over here is an actual scanning electron microscope photograph, so not an artistic interpretation of what DNA is doing as it begins to be supercoiled. So DNA starts off, let's say, as one thread, like one, you know, piece of yarn, and then supercoiling is when you take that thread and you keep on twisting it. And if you keep on twisting it more and more and more, this is the first thing it does. It makes kind of like a loop. And then if you keep on twisting more and more and more, and so what you're doing when you're twisting is you're adding energy to it, kinetic energy of movement, and it turns into the static energy of potential. It becomes a spring that is tightly coiled up, and it has different stages of coiling. This is called supercoiling. So supercoiling is a behavior that DNA does as it is going from this formless, unfurled chromatin into being a chromosome. DNA packs itself up into a chromosome shape right before mitosis. Let's write out that word. Ooh, can I do this properly? Here, this. Can you see it at the top of my screen? There you go. That means cell division. So cell division is like when you're going to go on a trip and you have all of your socks and underwear and everything like that, and you have to somehow get all of your stuff into your little carry-on suitcase that you can get on your journey. That is what DNA is doing when it is preparing for mitosis. It's for most of the cell's life, which can be years of its life. It is all unfurled. And then the DNA is all unfurled. And then right before it's ready to pack up and go on its journey, the DNA twists itself together into these spring-like formations. And that's just like when you carefully ball up your socks and everything in order to be able to pack it into your carry-on container. So supercoiling has different stages of coiliness. And these are what the supplemental homework videos will show you very well. Let me get go out of, I want to be able to move around. Hold on a second. How do I do this? But sometimes this is just a little, I'm going to have to stop share. Don't worry. I'll go back. Sorry, I don't mean to annoy you. Because now it will give me the capacity to rearrange my pictures. All right, let me go back to some of these. Not that one, but that one's really good. I can't wait to show you that one later. You're like, Aurora, show us now. We want to know now. I know I've got these all related here. Okay. So in terms of understanding DNA anatomy, what I would also like, we want to look at this one for the major and the minor groove, and then we want to look at, oh, okay, jumping around too much. Major and the minor groove, and this is a DNA cross-section, and where's histones? Not that one. Not that one. It's in there. Okay. Not going to mess around too much. Get the annotation. Come on, annotate. Now I want the annotation and it won't come up. Bear with me. Oh my goodness. All right, stupid thing. Come on, stupid thing. Oh, stupid thing. Oh, stupid thing. Yeah. Okay, here we go, annotate. So this is another scientific image. Then when I say scientific, I mean like it's an actual camera. Took an actual picture of this. An artist didn't paint it. This is of the process, the moment of mitosis. And so what happens, what you can see here, the blue, these are the chromosomes, and chromosomes are usually X-shaped, but in the moment of mitosis, the X's split apart into V's, and the half of the V's go into becoming one cell, and the other half of the V's go into becoming the other cell. So these guys would go up here and they would become the new genetic material of its whole own cell, and these guys would go down here and become the genetic material of its own cell. So what you're looking at in this image, the blue over here, these are these little V shapes. You can kind of see them like this. And I chose this one because it looks so much like a flying rainbow lasagna, and it's an actual, electron microscope photograph of the process of the moment of mitosis. So I'm trying to be like, I would like to show you as many accurate things as I can and relate them to the truth of the lasagna and the curly edge of it. We'll get more into this. All right, this image over here where I'm scribbling in red, this is another, it's like a composite. An artist took the raw materials of a scanning electron microscope and then did some colorization and other interpretations on top, but these are, it's very accurate in trying to show what it is. And one of the things that I want you to, one of the big takeaways is seeing the spacing of how DNA is formed. This is where I'm making this red mark, skinnier Then this, where I'm making this red mark, this is fatter. And these are called the major and the minor groove. So I am here telling you in this class that you have vibrating strings inside of you, just like the vibrating strings of a guitar. That you make a bunch of music with your DNA all the time. And science, I didn't even make them call it this, calls these different aspects of your DNA anatomy your major and your minor groove. So you're groovy, all right? You guys are very groovy. And the in this image, so this is one thread of a DNA, one strand of DNA. And then this green thing over here, this is an RNA messenger. What's the difference between RNA and DNA? DNA is the book. It's the blueprint. It's the stuff that is there. It doesn't get rewritten unless you do flying rainbow lasagna. I'll talk about that. RNA are the messengers. These are the guys that read the pages of the book. So DNA is the book, the RNA are the messengers that read the pages of the book, and they also replicate. Let me go to that. I keep on trying to find that image, and it keeps on not coming up, so let me find it for you. Oh, can I do it in front of you here? Nope, can't do it in front of you here. Stop share. Get the image. This. That's just way easier. Now this off, now this in front of my face. Okay. All right, this image over here also comes from a one of the supplemental homework videos that is about, I want to say, it might be called like RNA methylation or something like that. So we also have an accurate depiction of the DNA anatomy, major and minor groove here. This is skinny groove is the minor groove, fatter groove is the major groove. And your DNA is a book. It is a book that is more akin to Braille than it is to, like written language like we know, because it is felt. It is felt. That is the way that it, not made of felt. It is perceived by feeling, like tactile sensation. So here, this big giant blob, this is your RNA messenger. And the way that it reads, quote unquote, the book of pages of your DNA is by rolling along these grooves, kind of like a sensitive fingertips touch Braille, and feels the bumps, feels the shape of the actual amino acids, and is able to read those shapes at quote unquote and get an understanding of the information that is presented in those shapes. So now let's talk about in the process of supercoiling. We start off with one thread, one piece of woolen yarn, and then we twist and twist and twist, and it becomes that loop. And what are we twisting around? These shapes here, these kind of reddish blobs, are called histones. Let's write it for you. And they are protein structures. Sorry, it's in a color that you can't read effectively. Histones, these are protein structures, and I would encourage you to think of them like a spool of thread. So here's the spool, and then here's the thread actually wrapping around the spool. That is exactly what histones do. They are like the spool, here, go backwards, that DNA wraps around. So as we begin to add more and more energy into the DNA as it is being supercoiled, it begins to wrap around protein structures. And you can see it wraps around twice. It's coming around here, and it goes around, and then it goes around again, and then it goes on to the next one. And here you can see one wrap, two wrap, and then on to the next. And in this particular snapshot of DNA behavior, we can see that these are far apart. See, oh, look at all this space. I'm making a big, giant red line. There's a huge gap. There's a lot of space there. So it's very easy for this RNA messenger to roll along here with a tactile sensation, sensing and reading the information in those pages of the book of you. So, but big takeaways. Here, let me go back to my face so that we can do some of this emphasis here. So DNA is like the book of you or the blueprint of you, but it isn't just the description of the shape of your face or color of your hair or any like basic protein structures. It is also the description of events in time, like I've been describing to you, time bundles of timelines of possibilities and probabilities. So DNA also relates to your description of events in time. And when your RNA is rolling along, reading those little, words of the pages of you, it also can relate to understanding building events, possibilities, like niches. A niche is like where you put a sculpture, an edifice, a place that you build that you then put a thing within. So your DNA has everything to do with making reality, making a set of events that you then as a consciousness go into and inhabit. And this will relate to the significance of flying rainbow lasagna. And when we rearrange on a DNA level, I'm not just telling everybody like this is how you get like purple eyeballs or this is how you grow whatever 12 arms. That's not actually what I'm encouraging. I'm encouraging everyone to use flying rainbow lasagna in order to rearrange the events of their life and of reality in order to achieve, optimum health and vitality and to abrogate the necessity of death. I'm looking aside because I want to check my notes. Okay. All right. So also, how we think of DNA. So science tells us, oh, DNA is a static thing. No. DNA is moving and vibrating and dancing all the time. Science tells us DNA is just a descriptor of physical protein structures. No, DNA also describes and informs our flight through time and many of the events that we experience in time. DNA is all about reproduction. And a lot of people think like, oh, reproduction, like, look, I'm pointing to like my womb. That's like that, make a baby with reproduction. That's not the only way that DNA is involved in reproduction. It is also involved in reproduction in the same way that like a copy machine, like a Xerox machine is involved in reproducing something. So you have cell one, like cell A, the mother cell, and then it reproduces and it becomes cell B, the daughter cell. So all of that has to do with the behavior of DNA. And like I was telling you before, mitosis is the cell reproduction, when you're making the mother parent cell into a baby cell. And so what it has to do is the DNA is vibrating, it's dancing, it's doing all of its stuff. Oh, it just got a message. Hey, it's time to reproduce. It's time to make another cell. So I'm going to have to roll up all of my socks and underwear into my little carry-on luggage, become a chromosome. And the chromosome is like a spaceman in his space suit. And that's necessary because at a certain point, the nuclear membrane dissolves and the chromosomes, the genetic material, is just floating there in cytoplasm. So that's like a very vulnerable position. That's why the DNA has to all be curled up. So the DNA is a vulnerable aspect of self. Just like last week, I was talking about the interplay between this chakra, your Christ chakra, and this chakra, your crown chakra, and how this is a very sensitive, like the needle on a compass, and it has to be housed within this protective array. In exactly the same way, your DNA is a sensitive structure. It's a sensory organ. It's sensitive, and it's vulnerable to getting messed about. So that's why the nuclear membrane protects it. And that's the holy of holies, like, the sacred library full of rare books that only RNA messengers are allowed to go in. And the RNA messengers are very special, and they put on white gloves, and they treat the scrolls in a very special way. And the DNA never exits the nucleus. It stays in the library. So the job of the RNA messengers is to put on their white gloves and their Tyvek suits and go into the special rare books section, open up the scrolls, read what's in there, and then they take copies. And they make copies that they can then bring out of the library, and they can give those to all of the workers and be like, okay, workman, like this is what you got to make. And the workers, as I was saying, don't just make your earlobes, they also make events in reality. So when we're understanding flying rainbow lasagna, we're talking about not only changing your DNA on a sense of the gametes, like the sexual reproductive cells that you will then pass on to your children or, possible descendants of the future. It's not just that way. It is about changing and transforming on a cellular level within this generation. So that's another big emphasis. As you transform on a genetic level, it's not like, oh, first you're going to improve your DNA structure just as a potential within your reproductive cells and then pass along those new traits or potentials to the future generation. No, you inhabit those new traits and potentials in this generation. And that is very big because it means no more waiting for the future. We don't have to kick the can down the road or experience that solution will happen in 20 generations or this many years, blah, blah, blah. We have to change all the babies and then raise the babies. No, this is flying rainbow lasagna time. You can do this right now with your own body. And I'm drinking and I'm checking out my notes. Okay. Epigenetics. Write it out. Epigenetics, it means the code that rules the code. So when genes were first discovered or invented in roughly the 1940s, at first there was this idea of genetic fatalism, like really looking at your genes as a very literal blueprint, that if something is literally written in your blueprint, it is fated, not that it will be a fatal disease, but it is meant to or destined to happen, whether you want it to or not. Epigenetics is a relatively new conception, like within the past 10 or 15 years. And a good researcher that I can point you in the direction of, a worthy person to look into, is the work of Bruce Lipton. Lipton, like, the tea. He is a research scientist. So if you're like a objective materialist skeptic and you're like, I don't know about this lasagna, but let me look into some science, that's fine. And I encourage you to, do all the self-education, all the research, and get all the nutrients. He's a really good bridge between the ideas that I present and the ideas of, pure objective materialism. And so basically, Bruce Lipton teaches all about epigenetics, that our DNA is a series of potentials. And then there is the question of what activates those potentials. So this means the code that rules the code, your DNA being a code, but the other aspect being what activates that code. So here's a good example. Identical twins do not develop identical diseases. So if we have identical twins, it means they both came from the same exact cell that split apart and made, these two copies of the same blueprint. Many, many times it is perceived that one of those twins in adulthood will develop cancer, but the other one does not. And so we have to say, therefore, cancer is not something that is merely written in your genes, and you are fated or destined to have it if it's written in your genes. So this is a refinement of the original understanding. DNA was first discovered in the 1940s, and science's preliminary assessment was, if you have something written in your genetic code, it has to happen. It necessarily has to happen. There's no personal control or personal choice about what you experience, what is evidenced in your life experience. And more recently, more sophisticated science has come along that says, wait, that's not true, because we can see identical twins both start off with the same potential, genetic potential, yet their life experience is different. They don't have the same trajectory. What is the difference? And the difference is thought structure, behavior, and emotional tone. And all of this has to do with methylation of DNA. So now, as I go back to some of my meticulously arranged images, this one over here. This is why I brought this one forward. So if your DNA is like springs, when it gets to be coiled at a certain point, we're coiling up one thread of DNA, and it starts to be coiled up kind of like springs. So if you look in the thumbnail, you look at my fingers. Here are my fingers. They're spread far apart. Imagine these are springs that are not, tightly coiled together, and the RNA messengers can easily squeeze between my fingers and read those loops. Now, and these are like pages of a book. Now imagine that I put my fingers close together. I'm sticking together those pages of the book. And now RNA messengers cannot easily access those areas. They can't squeeze between my fingers. They can't read what's in there. The difference between fingers spread apart and fingers tightly coiled together, that difference is a difference of thought structure, belief system, and emotional tone. So let's say that this DNA over here pattern is how to grow a horrible cancerous tumor, by your body. And RNA can clearly get in there and read those pages very easily. And part of what makes that aspect of your DNA available might be an idea structure, something, a program, like a software program. I'm not a transhumanist. Along the lines of something like, if grandmother or mother had this disease, you will have it too. Right? That idea. And every time you go, these are subtly woven into or conditioned into your consciousness, these expectations. Like when you go to the doctor and they take a medical history, doctor says, does grandma have this? Does mom have this? Blah, 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 a family history, with the implication that it's genetic. If it's in your DNA and mom had breast cancer or grandma had breast cancer, then you've got a blah, blah, blah likelihood of having that too. But the doctor does not say, well, what were the pages of your parents' books like? What was grandmother's pages of her book? Were they open like this, or were they stuck together? So grandmother might have had a wide open page over here of how to grow a horrible, nasty tumor. And mother might have had it too, but you don't have to have that. Even if you have this passage in your DNA, what you can do is close those pages together, tightly coil those aspects of your DNA, and say, I will not experience that experience. So again, it's not just the physical protein structure of how to grow a tumor, it's the whole experience of cancer. It's the whole experience of that trajectory of disease and possible death. You can say, no, I'm not interested in having those life experiences. I change on a different level. How about we say instead that this area over here contains the pages of your book that say how to dismantle a horrible tumor. And maybe grandmother and mother both had their pages. That chapter of how to dismantle the tumor was stuck together inside of them because they might have been programmed with the belief that cancer is a fatal disease and that if you get cancer, there's nothing you can do about it. But you might have a different mindset, a different set of beliefs, and a different set of emotions that literally makes your DNA behave in a different way. That makes this critical chapter, how to dismantle the tumor, available to you. That was not available to other family members. So back to my face. All of this in order to say that there is a huge amount of personal responsibility in the body that we build or manifest, and in the health or vitality or lack thereof or disease, and the life experiences that we manifest. So I'm also, there was at one point like kind of a thing culturally, I think maybe from the last century, where people thought that if you got cancer, it was something like you made it happen to yourself, like some kind of self-victimization or whatever. That is, to be clear, not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about a sense of expectation or alignment with, I'm just drinking, that to align oneself with possibilities. Not to say like, oh, it's so great to get cancer because mom and dad had it, but to say like, oh, that's just inevitable. It runs in the family. And this programming and expectation is so deep and so profound, even to the point that some women, like I'm sad to hear this and to say this to you, have had preemptive mastectomies where they had genetic counseling that said, well, you've got this gene and you've got this chance of having it because of blah, blah, blah. So you should just remove your breasts surgically, even though they're healthy, in order to prevent that disease from manifesting. You're like, no, there's so many other things that you can do in terms of the genetic behavior of your body before you go to preventative surgery. So that's why that is just very disturbing. So wait. Okay, now when your DNA is chromatin inside of your nuclei of your cells, it has behavior, and I'll go to pictures of this too, but first I'll show you with my hands. It's coiled up very tightly in some places. If you've ever, I don't know how to even use an analogy for this, but in some places the DNA is so tightly coiled that the RNA can't get in there, even if it wants to. So what you got to do in order to unstick those pages is relieve some tension. And so there are little enzymatic snippers that come in and they snip part of the strings of DNA, relieving tension so that it's kind of like scrolls that can unroll and then be read. And so here are some of the things that are happening in terms of supercoiling and DNA behavior. You have like oscillations where it's moving in and out. You have twists and turns and interweavings, and you also have snips where enzymes snip, they unroll, and then they resnip. And this is important to understand. So this is all natural behavior. It has nothing to do with any kind of genetic CRISPR mechanism or machine or anything like that. And again, the enzymes, these are all directed by your energy, by your thought structure, by your emotional structure, by non-physical energy structures. Okay, so the snipping and movement is already a natural part of what your DNA is doing. Now I have to go and draw pictures for you. This is part of DNA replication. So here's a thread of DNA, and I showed you accurately, like DNA does not have if we draw it accurately, it is not shaped like this with equal loops. If we draw it accurately, it is shaped like, more like this, right? Where we have the major groove and the minor groove. And at a certain point, in order to have RNA messengers replicate it, the loop splits apart. So now it's time to get going with my fancy dancy pipe cleaners. The pipe cleaners, the DNA is twisted together, but then the RNA messenger wants to make a Xerox copy, so it unzips, it splits the DNA apart, and then these are just like, you know, a zipper where you have teeth on one side and teeth on the other side, and those teeth are little amino acids. And I'll just draw them kind of like, you know, super fast, little amino acid zipper teeth. And they all have partners, and they all fit together, and they are like puzzle pieces, and they always fit with their proper partners. There's a whirling motion in terms of what is happening. So there's my words are not even describing this right. This is part of the supplemental homework video. And if a picture's worth 1,000 words, animation is worth 10 million words, watch the video. There's like a little molecular machine that is at this point in the splitting of the DNA. And it reminds me kind of like a ticker tape, old-fashioned stock market ticker, which had, you know, little pieces of paper that went into it and then were printed upon and then shot out the other side, you know, telling you what the stock market of the day was doing. That is exactly what these little blue machines are like. They shoot out the DNA that's being replicated kind of like a loop, like a ticker tape loop. And this blue, I call it molecular machine, it is whirling and twirling and spinning at a very fast rate. It's literally spinning as fast as a jet engine. So your DNA is not only vibrating on a cellular level, plucking my guitar like a string, right? You also have these whirling motions that act as gyro-stabilizers. So when I did the lesson that was all about the creation of the chakra shape, and I told you that this is created by nothing more than time, the movement of time whirling and swirling amidst itself, and that, you know, this is a static object, but I'm sure it is the end result of a motion like this, and we have motions like this and motions like this. So you're swirling on an energetic level, and that also has a gyro-stabilizing effect, like when you ride a bicycle. The wheels spinning help to keep you upright. And this is about your flight through time. The spinning of the molecular little machine, the ticker tape machine, as it is replicating your RNA, is analogous to the spinning of your chakras. And it creates a gyro-stabilizing effect. So your DNA has a natural spinning movement that spins very fast. And gyro-stabilizing means making something not fall over, like keeping it steady, keeping it focused. So I also spoke about how when we experienced at humanity and the planet the genetic degradation of having invaders, consciousness invaders and genetic invaders come to our planet and come to our physical structure, the problem that happened was degradation of that spin. That our planet literally used to be at a different angle, and when our spin of our DNA changed, whatever, blah, blah, the words are trying to say, the gyro-stabilization effect of our DNA when we are in proper alignment keeps our planet in proper alignment. And when our chakras were destabilized and our DNA spin was destabilized, our planet was destabilized, and this is the catastrophe known as the fall of Atlantis, the fall of consciousness, the fall from grace, from not spinning in the right way. The bicycle wheels did not spin in the right way. Our bicycle fell over and we fell into the mud. Now what we are trying to do is get back up on the bicycle and get the wheels spinning in the right way. And this is all, I will tell you how Flying Rainbow Lasagna relates to that. But first, just understand the degradation or decay of that spin, or wobbling, destabilization of that spin had a profound effect not only on our, let me go back to my face, consciousness bodies, on our, me, consciousness, and individual body, but on our whole entire planet, because we're connected to our planet. You're not only are you not swimming around in your own private kiddie pool of consciousness, you are on a genetic level connected to the rest of the symphony. I need to drink water. So that's a good segue into sympathetic vibration. Your vibrating strings of your DNA are inherently connected to the vibrating strings of all the rest of everything that's around you, not just the humans, microbes, butterflies, giant redwood trees, the planet herself. So this is the phenomenon of sympathetic vibration. guitar over here has 6 strings, and I'm going to pluck this one that's closest to, you know, my hand over here. But when I pluck this, it makes the string vibrate back and forth. It vibrates the atmosphere, the context that all the strings reside within, and it actually affects all of the other strings, even making this far distant string vibrate a little bit. It is called sympathetic vibration. Now, you might not actually be able to hear it. I'll talk about lesson 2, harmonics, you know, that the level 2 stuff, and when we get to harmonics, but it is being affected. So let's say this string over here, that's me. I came into this body. I started to do a new genetic dance, make a new vibration, a new melody, a new sound with my DNA. And then all the rest of humanity and all the other, you know, beings on Earth are all of these other strings. I'm affecting all of these other strings with my particular song. But guess what? They're all affecting me. This string over here just got stimulated, and it's vibrating the atmosphere, and all of that is bouncing back and affecting me over here. So this is how we can understand you're part of a giant symphony. You're part of a band. It's not just about you and what you're doing on your little old genetic level. You have a rapport. You play music, and then the rest of the band plays their music in response. And health and vitality and stabilization for the entire planetary structure. And we'll get into what's going on with the solar system and why are we unstable and everything like that in level 2, has everything to do with us writing our DNA structure, getting our DNA back, getting back on the genetic bicycle and getting your wheels moving in the right direction again. So that doing that internally and as an individual affects the group and affects the entire planet. I know that there are many, many comments and questions, and I'm not ignoring you at all. I'm on a groove. I'm in the major and the minor groove, and I will get back and do it. So I did. Okay, good. Sympathetic vibration, enzymatic snipping. I did that. Okay. So flying rainbow lasagna, this is all about a way to restructure your DNA. So first I'll just show you with the fancy pipe cleaners. So DNA at a certain point is unzipped. The genetic the genetic zipper is unzipped like this, so that RNA can go on this side and RNA can go on this side, and it shoots out the ticker tape, and then usually what happens is it zips it back together. If you just unzipped all of the DNA of your whole entire body, you would die, because that is too unstable. It's kind of like being in a state of quantum indeterminacy, because remember, these don't just tell you about what is the shape of your eyes. These tell you about what are the shape of the events of your life. So if we've unzipped, then we are essentially saying, like, we are rewriting the script of life. We are rewriting the potentials of life. And if we unzipped all of the script of your life and started rewriting all these potentials without any stabilization, it's like you would be disconnected from reality. It's like, are you this? Are you this? What's happening? What's going on? There'd be too unstable. You would be destabilized to the point of death. The flying rainbow lasagna acts as a genetic placeholder that stabilizes these openings when you unzip the DNA and make it into kind of a V shape. So now let's just, imagine I've got to unzip that to kind of go like this. One aspect of the DNA begins to go around this part of the flying rainbow lasagna, let's call it like the front. And if you can see this, if I hold up the lasagna in just the right way to the camera, you'll see this point right here is the crossing point, where we have one strand of DNA that goes behind it. Can you even see? I'm going behind here. Man, you can't even see this on the camera. My pipe cleaners are not even showing up effectively on the camera. Oh my goodness, here. This one bends around, so here, goes around like this. Here's the crossing point. Goes around like this, boom, boom. So this is the DNA stuck together. We unzip it like a V, and one portion of that V goes around, or like a Y, goes around the front of the lasagna, and one portion of the Y goes around the back of the lasagna. And this is the crossing point where you see this in diagrams. I don't know if my words describe that very well. Let me go to diagrams in order to show this to you. Here. Hold on. Oh man, I don't know if you're even seeing what I'm trying to show you here. I'm clearing things out. Wait, go back to stop share. Sorry, guys. Man, I don't want to make you feel annoyed by having to watch me click all these different things. Close. Almost. That's for the other second part here, but over there, here. Nope, not that. We'll get to that too. It's over here. Not that. We'll get to that. Not that. We'll get to that. That's a good one though. You're like, man, Rora. Not that one. We'll get to that too. How about this one? This, we're getting there. So here you can see zipped apart, new strands, old strands, and boom. God, thank God. Okay. Oh, no, you go away. This one goes over here. Oh my goodness, a minor miracle has occurred. You can see all the pictures I want you to see. All right, cool. This part, and I can annotate too. Miracles are happening. So this is what I was just drawing. Here's one strand of DNA, and this is an accurate representation because you can see both the major and the minor groove zipped apart. Here's one part of the genetic zipper. Here's the other part of the genetic zipper. Here's all the little teeth that fit together. And the teeth, if you direct your attention down here to this one that is a little bit more accurate, it shows you the name of the amino acids. There are 4 amino acids that are abbreviated with T, A, G, and C. So we could think of them as 4 notes, right? And that's all that we got to make an entire symphony, an entire genetic symphony. We have 4 notes to be able to explore. So there's a limited number of combinations of things that you can do because A always connects with T, C always connects with G. This is the genetic zipper. There are like no negotiations here. So there's not been a way up until the invention of flying rainbow lasagna. Previous to the invention of FRL, there was not a way to rearrange the zipper, to rearrange the notes of this musical score of you, to rewrite what is in you as a genetic potential. So some of the things that we need to understand are what science calls junk DNA is genetic potential. That is not junk at all. It is unexplored. It's like the, higher aspects that it needs to be folded and rearranged and behave in the right direction in order for that picture to be evident. So it's just like you have to fold in origami, a flat piece of paper into origami to be able to see what the shape is. Oh, it's a crane. Oh, it's an owl. When DNA is not folded into its higher dimensional shape, the information is interpreted by science as junk. It doesn't make sense. So science has to add another dimension for this to make sense. There was not a way previous to flying rainbow lasagna to rearrange these, these basic sequences of information that we have passed down to us from previous ancestral generations. Okay, got the words to actually come out until flying rainbow lasagna. So I'll show you the animation of this too, but you guys, maybe you haven't seen it if you're really new to the class. This shape, I'm holding up a static sculpture right now that is actually a 3-dimensional object, but the object itself is a vibration or an oscillation that moves. So this is a dynamic shape, just like your DNA is a dynamic shape. And this shape is, the lasagna shape is an end result of an oscillation, a jumping back and forth of this central convergence point from this position to this position, back and forth, and it leaves this, cone-like wake, right? And at the same time that it's jumping back and forth like that, it's also spinning around and rotating like this. So there's different vectors of movement here, both like this way and also this way and this way. So we have split apart the genetic zipper, right? And instead of everything being mushed up and unstable and having the person die, what we do is make a flying rainbow lasagna here. Oh, look, I'm jumping up and down. I'm making a genetic oscillation. I make this shape happen in this orientation of the genetic zipper. So that now this shape, on the screen, it's oriented like this on the static image over there, turns around like this. Spins at the same time that it's oscillating and vibrating in and out like this. It also spins around like this, or it spins around like this. And what that means is, just going to get a better color so you can see it more easily. This dance partner over here, Mr. G, doesn't only have to dance with the lovely lady across from him now, Mrs. C. Now, Mr. G can dance with, here's a different one. Here's a different dance partner down here. Like, I'm so bored with dancing with Mrs. C. I've danced with her for many centuries, and I want to dance with this lady over here instead. And maybe this guy over here is like, I'm so bored with my partner. I want to dance with this girl over here instead. And this Mrs. T is like, I'm so bored. I want to dance with this A over here. More genetic possibilities, more genetic rearrangements. So as I'm describing this to you, you can say, like your DNA structure that you got handed down from your ancestors. This is kind of like getting a random accumulation of all sorts of different information. Like I'm getting a phone book. You get the phone book or some kind of technical manual. It's just like, it's not artistically put together at all. It's just, information. And what you can do with Flying Rainbow Lasagna is like saying we're going to take a pencil with an eraser. And theoretically, if I give you anything, if you have any piece of literature, any piece of written material, you can turn it into the greatest piece of literature if you have the capacity to erase some of the letters that you don't want and reproduce the letters that you do want. Like as long as you have a book that contains all the 26 letters of the alphabet and punctuation symbols, if you can erase and reproduce, then you can rearrange the basic ingredients of that book into the most amazing lasagna, masterpiece, whatever it is. So you can take the phone book and all of the letters and numbers and symbols of the phone book, and you can rearrange it into War and Peace, James Joyce's Ulysses, Wizard of Oz, whatever is your favorite book. That's the whole idea. In this body, in this present generation, each one of us has inherited a bunch of gobbledygook, like a technical manual that is not very artistically arranged. And some of it even includes, horrible chapters like how to grow tumors and stuff like that. And it's up to us. When you get a Flying Rainbow Lasagna, you get a pencil with an eraser. I don't know where there's a pencil. Pencil with an eraser. Oh, right here. Mechanical pencil. Pencil with a mechanical eraser. And you can say, well, okay, I don't like this chapter and the way it's written about how I'm going to get a disease. I'm going to erase that part out. And what I'm going to do instead is take some of these interesting pieces of information over here, and I'm going to reproduce them, and I'm going to write them in over here. And that's like, oh, and then I didn't get cancer. Instead, I became the aerialist and worked on the trapeze instead. Like these are the types of things that are available to us once we begin to become empowered. And I call it, I'm just getting my notes together here, a genetic virtuoso. So what that really means is not only, this is also very big in terms of taking personal responsibility and worldview that for many years, or millennia, or hundreds of years, possibly thousands, humanity was looked at itself as like, condescending little idiots. Like, there's some great sky god, some great father in the sky that makes everything happen. And you're just a stupid loser. And you're just supposed to, this is destiny and fate. It's like saying you don't have free will. You don't get to do what you want to do. You just follow the, notes that someone else tells you what to do. Follow your genetic notes. Mr. C dances with Mrs. G, and that's just the way it happens. And then you get cancer and you die. And, there's very little personal responsibility taken for the experience and the manifestation of reality. Now we're, just like I told you last week in class, entering into a new age of Aquarius, the age of personal responsibility, exiting the Piscean age, the age of Pisces. That's all about external authority figure. Tell me what to do. Mommy, daddy, Jesus, government, president, someone tell me what to do, and instead taking personal responsibility because you awaken your higher faculties and your own connection to the divine, and you feel the music inside, and you don't need someone else outside of you telling you what to do and what to play. This is the extension of that idea that you have been given this musical score, phone book randomness of your DNA, that you're like, okay, like I got some good stuff that I like, and then I got some crap that I don't really like. And what do I do with the crap? Well, you can, epigenetics, you can coil up your DNA so that the crap is just in a chapter that nobody ever reads, or you can rewrite those chapters. That is very big. The idea of personal responsibility, personal freedom, expanded freedom. So this is literally what it means when every time I say adding an additional dimension means adding an additional degree of freedom and transforming from this basic shape. Oh, I got to tell you all about this. Okay. So in a non-physical energy sense, over the course of this class so far, I've spoken about how this is the shape of your energy field that surrounds your body. It's made of time, it's made of timelines and possibilities and probabilities. And this is shaped like a torus or a toroidal, shape, or a donut shape. And in the supercoiling of your DNA, when it gets to certain levels of supercoiling, it similarly achieves a torus shape. I'm dropping my magical thing here. Hold on a second. Go to the whiteboard and tell you what I'm talking about here. DNA achieves a torus shape. So it's several levels of supercoiling. So the first one is, here's one strand of DNA. Here it is wrapping around the histones, right? Those protein structures. And then it goes to the next histone and it wraps around twice. And then it goes to the next one and it wraps around twice. And then it goes to the next one and it wraps around twice. And that creates, I don't know if you can see it in that drawing, but kind of a donut structure. So just at the beginning of when DNA begins to be supercoiled, it makes a donut structure. And then if that's kind of like here, donut hole, and then donut cake around the sides. And at a certain point, all of those donuts get stacked up together. This is part of supercoiling. We have, at a certain point, many, many stacked up donuts. I'm just drawing them as fast as I can here. And when you begin to flying rainbow lasagna, so flying rainbow lasagna is a new dance movement for your DNA. It's both a consciousness verb, like something that you do with your consciousness, is something that you experience internally. And as you experience it internally, it makes changes to the behavior of your DNA and the way it dances. And then it also makes changes to the larger macroscopic giant energy field that surrounds and interpenetrates your physical body. So I'm going to reiterate that. You begin to do the flying rainbow lasagna dance, right? You're like, I'm dancing, I'm doing it. You're dancing on a subcellular level. Your DNA is doing this dance that's changing and shifting and rewriting the genetic information of who and what you are. And at the same time you're doing that, on all the little tiny cells and vibrating strings of your body are doing that, the larger energy field around you, what would be analogous to Earth's magnetosphere, the giant toroidal energy field around you and all the chakras and energy centers in your heart and the stabilized EMF field that is created by your heart, that all begins to do flying rainbow lasagna too. So this is your microcosmic or tiny fractal self and your giant macrocosmic, like the size of self that is visible to others and on the planet. Both of these things are doing flying rainbow lasagna simultaneously when you have this experience. So these multiple donuts are stacked up next to each other as part of supercoiling. And then what you do is, I'm just drawing very, very rough flying rainbow lasagnas, but you start to make if there's a central convergence point here, you make it jump up and down, up and down, up and down. And what that creates is flying rainbow lasagna like that. And then you have another one that's down here, and you'll start to see that they overlap. And those are overlapping possibilities. And the overlapping possibilities are very much like I was talking about pastiche culture, quilting together various divergent things. Like hip-hop music does this. We might take some beats from one song and then weave into that, modern music, a little snippet from Mozart or a little snippet from Jimi Hendrix. It is a quilt. We're putting it together out of different elements of a recipe that is made of multiple different elements. Oh, let me just drink a little bit of water. Right? So we've got the Beastie Boys, like singing, then a little bit of Jimi Hendrix, then Beastie Boys, then a little bit of Mozart. That is what we can do with DNA. You can be like, events, and then I'm going to put in a new snippet. Here's a new event that I want to put in, and that new event can be something that arises internally from you, from your ideas, from your cosmology, or it can be inspired from someone else. Like the Beastie Boys can sample Jimi Hendrix. The Beastie Boys can sample Mozart. You can get inspired by someone else. Let's name a great athlete, someone who's really great. And you're like, well, I don't know how to do flips, but that guy over there does. I'm going to snip and I'm going to get inspired by that. Or maybe great musical achievement. I'm very inspired in my musical, efforts by the great musician and composer Mozart. And so I'm like, well, hey guys, if you're going to get inspired, steal from the best, right? So I'm like, hey, I want to feel the genetic behavior of Mozart and how he was able to be so tuned in and make these new things. Take a snip from Mozart and put it into Aurora. And now Aurora has some of that inspiration. But I don't copy Mozart, so that's a big thing. It is the flavor. Going to take some of that inspiration, some of that flavor, but then it comes into my recipe and it blends in with all the other flavors that are in my recipe. So this is big. This is beginning to understand, like, you are, just like I was talking about with the guitar, you're connected to all of the other strings, all of the other players in the band. The music that Mozart, the living being, sent out affects me and many, many other people, not just in terms of his musical output, but his feeling, who he was as a person and the music that he made and, the artistic representations that he made. And that song, I'll just go back to my face, that song continues to reverberate and we can continue to access it even though he lived, whatever, hundreds of years ago. So we are connected on a genetic level. Genes are used to transfer information down the ages. So it's not just what are the shape of your eyes, and it's also not just the events of your life, like whether you develop cancer, or whether you go on a Caribbean cruise. It is also information, ideas about musical structure, or ideas like what I was talking about, Sir Isaac Newton, the ideas of objective materialism and exploring the world of only our five senses, and building a picture. It's physics, the idea of physics. That was a very strong song. Newton was like, this is my song, physics. And he played his melody and it continues to reverberate today. It affects all of us. So we are not all the physical offspring of Sir Isaac Newton. That's not my ancestor. I'm not connected to him physically on a biological level, but on a consciousness level, his music goes through my DNA, goes through your DNA. Every one of us. If you learned about, any level of physics, then you're listening to the music of Sir Isaac Newton. And I'm inspired and, listening to the music of many great thinkers and artists and beings that are here on this planet. And, I learn from them. So this is the other idea. It's not just that you make a change in your DNA level, and you change your sex gametes, your sexual reproductive cells, and then pass those changes on to your own babies and your own offspring, and it stays within your lineage. No, what you're doing is affecting all of the other human musicians, all of the other life forms, and the planet herself, because the planet herself has not a DNA structure, but a toroidal energy structure. And as I already stated, the whirling motion of our DNA, when it's doing that ticker tape replication, is directly related to Earth's spin and Earth's stabilization on her axis. And Dominic, I don't know if Dominic is tuned in here today. He's a lovely friend and participant student in this class, and he's done lovely research himself of mapping the conception of the chakras, spinning energy centers, and where they coincide with actual areas on the globe, and the understanding of weather patterns, swirling cyclones, and storms, and other evidences of these swirling patterns and how that relates. So the basic idea here is, don't panic, don't be so sad when you see that our wind and ocean and weather patterns are destabilized. They are from effery, from hinky-jinkery, from the malevolent technology using beings that have used technology to be able to change these natural patterns for malevolent purposes. Like they're trying to make, cover your ears, horrible music. They've made horrible music with our weather. Don't be sad, because the way that you retune the guitar and make the weather better, your own music coming from inside, you start to, I am singing a better song, and all of a sudden the planet starts to spin in a better way. So of course, the more that we sing together, the more our music is amplified. And this is how you can also understand, be like, Aurora, like, I've been singing my song here and like nothing's happening. You know what? It takes a lot of beings working together to have a symphony. So it's not just one sing the song, it's many of us sing the song. And when it gets together, it really does get amplified. Let's also talk about metronomes and, well, whatever, I'll just do it in this, not level 2, I'll do it in level 1. Metronomes and the idea of synchronization and genetic movement. So with these genetic movements, like we dance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like it goes on a beat. This is music has a connection to time. All right. So our synchronization, it's not just how high or how low or anything like that. We're talking about how you as a vibrating string are going to synchronize your vibrations with the rest of everything that is happening here. It has a great deal to do with time. So if you have in a scientific experiment, or like a demonstration of this principle, a table with many, many different metronomes. And the metronomes, they keep time, but some of them are going super, 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 super fast, and some of them are just going slow. And if you set up this array, the metronomes are not touching physically, but they do share the common context of the tabletop. And the ones that are going super, super, super fast start to slow down. They give energy to the ones that are going slow, and the ones that are going slow start to speed up. And this is what's happening right now in the planetary transformation. There are some of us that are going super, super, super fast, super lasagna fast, right? We're musicians that are like on the beat, on the beat, on the beat, on the beat. And there are some very slow, plodding musicians that are just stumbling along. And we're all connected through the commonality of our biological context and connection to the planet. What we're doing with our music affects other musicians. So as you cultivate yourself, accrete more light, when I say cultivate yourself, cultivate your consciousness, accrete more light by doing sun gazing and eating a wonderful, light-filled, consciousness-filled food. Drink some juice here. Oh, you know what that is? Sorry, that looked gross. That is cannabis. It's a leaf of cannabis. Sorry. Yeah, as you drink your wonderful raw cannabis juice and you play with the cosmic composer, it's like, get on the beat, cosmic composer, and you're on the beat. You're affecting the other musicians that are rather laggardly. You're affecting them. They're kind of like, but you're like, tip, 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 tip. You get them on board. But it's not like you do it by twisting their arms, like, get on board because you're making me crazy. It's not like that at all. You just keep your beat. You just keep your beat, and you are sympathetically vibrating. You're affecting other beings. So this has everything to do with personal responsibility. You're really it's not like I'm looking out for number one. I'm only responsible for my own epidermis and its contents. You take personal responsibility for your own body and your own life, recognizing and acknowledging that what you do is connected to others, is connected to context, and that you are changing the rest of the world by what you're doing with yourself. So it's a balance between these two things. Responsibility and individuality. I take care of myself, and what I'm doing in the music that I'm playing on a genetic level is profoundly affecting the rest of the band. Okay. Back to my notes. Wait. Okay. So, Flying Rainbow Lasagna is about changing the structure of DNA. And I've used this analogy several times already in this class. Our DNA right now is kind of like a Rubik's Cube. I don't have one, but I should have one and show it, like all mixed up with all the colors all wrong and everything like that. And that is basically what's happened. We started out with our human genetic code and it was perfect. There was no such thing as death. There was no such thing as disease. And all of us were, completely divinely connected all the time, as smart as the biggest genius and, athletes. This is like being a super being, like Superman. We were all like Superman and Superwoman. And that's what life was like before the genetic degradation. And then after the genetic degradation, the challenge has been that the degradation was a rearrangement of what is there, like a randomizing. That's what happens when you take the Rubik's Cube and you mix it all up, you randomize it. So imagine we took the information of your DNA and turned it into some kind of junky, phone book that had no artistry, no arrangement to it. And then now we're on the return journey where we take all the stuff that is totally cracked up and add artistry to it, add finesse, add fineness to it. And so that is the journey of transforming from the toroidal shape into the flying rainbow lasagna shape, because this allows you to do the erasing of what you don't want and writing in of what you do want, or this is what allows you to change the move the Rubik's Cube in new directions and solve and change it. So before flying rainbow lasagna was invented, in order to solve the Rubik's Cube of your DNA, you would have had to move it in impossible directions. All right? Like imagine if you're like, okay, I'm a little ant, I'm walking along the surface of the flat surface of time, and then, oh, I hit a barrier here. I can't get past this barrier. In order to get past this barrier, you have to enter another dimension, a higher dimension. That means either jumping up and over the barrier, get down on the other side, or you can stay here. You can fold time and space until it supersedes that barrier and touches you right here. This is what is necessary. The Rubik's Cube of your DNA, up until October 8th of 2001, in order for you to rearrange it, you would have had to jump off the surface of time. It was not possible. There was no there. There was no dimension to jump into. So it was necessary to create another dimension that can be used as the solution to create a new movement to resolve your DNA. So this new dimension, it's also kind of like, if you've ever seen those they're like little math puzzle games where you have tiles that you have to kind of slide around and rearrange, but there has to be an empty space. If you don't have that empty space, all the tiles, they're stuck together, there's no way to rearrange. So I also use the Rubik's Cube as an example because you're not supposed to take parts away. It's not like, oh, we have too many pieces, we got to get rid of some pieces, or, oh, I got to get more pieces from the store, like building a Lego or something like that. It's not like that. And also, it's not like you're supposed to peel off the labels and then just rearrange the labels. No, what you are supposed to do is do a movement that rearranges the ingredients or the basic, the basic stuff that you've already got. Same thing with your body. You don't got to get rid of parts of your body, and you don't got to get new stuff. This is big. So you don't have to amputate portions of yourself or portion of your consciousness, and you don't have to get stuff. No magic elixir, no microchips, no stuff, no external stuff. You have to rearrange the ingredients that you already have inside of you. And that movement of rearrangement is flying rainbow lasagna. The movement of rearrangement happens any place where you have a torus or a donut structure. So as the DNA begins to be supercoiled, the genetic sweater is being knit together. It is wrapping around or methylating. The springs of the DNA are creating, they're coming apart or close together. That's one opportunity, the stacked up donuts, where we can make those donuts vibrate. And as they vibrate, they overlap. And we have overlapping areas of possibility. Like if you could have two different versions of Tuesday. On this version, I wake up in the morning and whatever, my face gets bitten off by an alligator and I die. And in this version of Tuesday morning, I wake up in the morning and, go off and, meet the person of my dreams and I'm showered with diamonds. And, one is definitely better than the other. What we can do is take elements from both and blend them together. So maybe I don't want to take the face biting part from the alligator possibility, but I want to take some parts from that and weave them together with some parts from the other reality. And then what you have is an ideal reality of the essential flavors from both sides. We're doing a blending together. So what does flying rainbow lasagna do? It brings together formerly divergent realms. And those divergent realms can be neighboring timelines. I got Tuesday morning, alligator face bite. Tuesday morning, meet Mr. Right. And these two different realities can be blended together. You see, I'm this purple dot jumping back and forth across the membrane, blending together these two different realities. I'm also going to relate this very, very quickly to vortex-based math. Go to my pictures over here. God, I keep doing that. Can you see this? Yeah, okay. I hope that you guys can see this properly. Did not draw this particular image. What it shows you is how vortex-based math, and this is just a very brief introduction to what that even is. This arrangement of numbers with 1 over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9 in the middle. This is kind of arranging the numbers like around the face of a clock, like an old-fashioned analog clock, and understanding that all of the processes of math that we understand, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, can be represented as vectors or directions of force around that shape. And that shape is also very much shaped like the cross-section of the torus that I'm always drawing. There's my little cross-section of a torus. And then here you can see this, I should have used a different color other than red. Let's choose purple. And you see this? You still can't see it, but you know what I'm talking about. It's the same basic shape. And this diagram relates that same basic shape to the shape of your DNA. And what you see over here, this torus, the skin of the torus is mapped with numbers. And those numbers are like Sudoku, or like the math puzzle, like one of these little, here I'll draw it, like a little square like this that is divided up. And you might have tiles or something like that. In Sudoku, you have numbers, like each integer from 1 through 9, and you need to rearrange them and you cannot repeat them. And that's exactly what you have going on over here. And all that you need to know is that the last moments of your life can be understood also as like the end of a math equation. Like day 1 plus day 2 plus day 3 plus day 5 plus day 5 million equals your death, the end of your life, or equals your return to the convergence point and your transcendence of the time vortex itself. There's only one solution to the math equation of you where that actually happens. And so in looking at all these numbers where I'm scribbling in purple over here, just understand them as events. And as you are flying rainbow lasagnaing, I'll draw it in here. Flying rainbow lasagnaing would be like taking this central big red dot and making it jump up and down, jump up and down, jump up and down until this becomes a flying rainbow lasagna. I hope you can see that. The donut becomes the flying rainbow lasagna shape. And as it's doing that, the skin of the torus is rearranged. The numbers that represent possibilities and probabilities and edifices of experience get rearranged. That is you're rewriting the script of reality. You're rewriting what is possible. Hans, I can see your, first of all, thank you for tuning in and thank you for being a student. And I know you're in Sweden and it's probably the middle of the night there. And Hans is making an excellent comment. It says, Tesla said 3, 6, and 9 is the key to the universe. That is exactly right. So here, I'm making a big giant red dot. There's the 3, there's the 6, and here's the 9. And so this makes kind of like a triangular structure that is interposed on top of, kind of like this, the toroidal structure. And yeah, well, we'll get into that in level 2. There are harmonic overtones in this structure that are essential. But what I'm trying to get across is the idea that when you are rearranging the Rubik's Cube of your DNA, you're transforming from this torus into lasagna. You're rearranging the events that are mapped on the skin of the torus, the last moments of your life. So go back to my face. How do I do it? Go back to my face here. The last moments of your life are part of your genetic structure, and they are arranged on these surfaces here, and you can rewrite the script. You can not get bitten on the face by an alligator and die on Tuesday morning. You can have a completely different life experience if you learn to flying rainbow lasagna. So again, don't be frustrated by this class that I'm giving you, because this is the what. It's not the how. I didn't teach you in this lesson today, Aurora, how do I actually do the dance? I'm teaching you what is happening when you do the dance. So when you actually do this verb, when you actually perform the flying rainbow lasagna, what you're doing is you're unzipping your DNA, which is a normal thing that we all do as a normal portion of our cellular life, but then you're keeping it unzipped and you're putting a big fat flying rainbow lasagna there. And the lasagna is spinning around and spinning around and spinning around and allowing you, instead of only doing the do-si-do with your partners across here, you can do-si-do like this. You can do-si-do like this. You can do all these interesting things. So I see it as like vibrations coming together like this, oscillations. And when you actually see me do the dance, you'll see me make these movements with my hands. that are very much about the twining together. I'm not just making random movements, and they're not merely aesthetic or artistic. I'm literally like a weaver, weaving together these strands, and the strands are my own DNA that I'm dancing on a subcellular level, and the tendrils of time that I'm connected to by being here in a physical body. Being in a physical body is not a burden. It is an opportunity. Like, there's a really good reason why I'm not sitting on a higher dimensional cloud, like being so comfortable, drinking strawberries and, whatever, eating strawberries and drinking champagne on a higher dimensional cloud, and my life is so easy and I have to worry about paying my electric bill. There's a reason why I'm here in the physicality, and I'm encouraging everyone to look at your life in this way, because everyone tends to think, physically embodied humans have been conditioned to think, you're small, poopy, you're a sinner, there's nothing that you can do, and the big man in the sky with the long white beard makes everything happen, and you just go through your paces and try to get into heaven. No, that is not what is actually happening. What is happening is you are a musician in the band. You're not just listening to the musical score, you're playing the music, and you can even improv, and you can even come up with new and interesting forms of forms of expression of what is happening. That's, your right as Flying Rainbow Lasagna. And the real power structure is that little old embodied humans, you and me, organic beings, we are very powerful musicians because we have guitars. This is your body. If you don't have a body, like if you're just some spirit floating around, you don't actually have a guitar. You don't actually have DNA strings that you can use to play music with. So being in the body is an awesome opportunity. We've got bodies. Yeah. It means I got a guitar. I've got an instrument through which I can play and make things happen in reality. Most humans that I know here, they're like, I don't want to have a guitar. My shoulders go down. I don't like my guitar. And I'll get into level 2 of what's going on with human guitars and everything like that. But yeah, I know that everybody, the guitar's out of tune and it sounds horrible and it's very difficult to play. When we get our guitars in tune, then it is much more fun to play. And then you'd be like, having an instrument is awesome. And I love being a part of the band. This is another good one. Okay. So when I was talking about those metronomes, the idea of, faster and slower eventually kind of equalize, and, faster moves slower and slower moves faster. Okay. Most people here got their DNA dance that they're presently doing. Before you learn lasagna from me, the way that you're dancing, your DNA, mostly comes to you from your parents and your ancestors. And so if we were to look at DNA as like genetic music, the previous generation, that's like the bars, the melody that you heard just before you were born, and that brought you into being. Those, aspects of self, like they're not necessarily playing exactly what you need to play for your generation. All of the ideas about the necessity of death and decrepitude, like getting weaker as you move through time as opposed to stronger as you move through time, and even the idea of some diseases, that all of those things that are passed down from your parents, and they got them from their parents, that's what I mean, that DNA is a way of transferring information through time, through many, many generations. And those, you're not disrespecting your ancestors if you look at the information or reverberations that have come down the timeline through DNA to you. And if you're like, this music sounds horrible, I don't like that music that my DNA is playing, that's like DNA music of disease. You could say, I don't like that music. If it came from your grandparents or your parents or whatever, you're not dishonoring them by saying, I don't want to play the music of disease. And that music of disease can also be music of emotional disease and, music of addiction, music of abuse, music of sexual violence and sexual abuse. Like, it can be all of the, not merely like growing malformed cells, but behavioral, sociocultural, energetic, emotional, all of that can be music that you don't want to play. I come with a new dance movement, a new music, and a new melody. and I offer it to you, but I don't impose it upon you. Like, that is big, because it's just not my value system to say, like, I'm going to make you dance like flying lasagna, whether you want to or not. That's not cool. It's not like, oh, I'm going to make you be part of the flying lasagna dance party, and everyone's there, and they're like, I don't want to be here, or maybe be here. Like, no, that's not what it's supposed to be like at all. It's supposed to be like, you are super happy because you've chosen to do the flying rainbow lasagna. And what I offer you is like a new melody that is different than what your parents and ancestors offered to you. Because this new melody basically says you do not have to hit the membrane of death. Death is not noble. Death is not inevitable. Death is not the exit or culmination from this level of reality. That's big, because when we came here as perfect little infants, at a certain point, someone programmed us with the idea of death, the idea that you will end your life. Babies don't come here with that information. They don't come here with that expectation. At a certain point, it might have been death of a loved one or a pet, or even something that you saw on a video. And you learned, like, oh, death is a thing. And then that's epigenetics. Your DNA was dancing in a particular way. And as soon as you ingested, you ate the idea of death, your DNA changed its dance. And you started to dance with the expectation of, one day I will die. And now I'm coming along with flying rainbow lasagna, and I'm saying, hey, pencil with an eraser. First of all, you can erase out the things in your DNA that you do not wish to have, write in the things that you do wish to have. And one of the things that you can erase out is the idea of the necessity of death. And just me, with my mouth, giving you this information changes the behavior of your DNA. Just like your mommy or daddy made you stop dancing from eternity into death expectation, I'm now giving you the opportunity. You can eat this new thought, and you can stop thinking that death is inevitable, and you can dance in a different way to think you don't have to die, that you can have a different experience of metamorphose or transformation or transcendence or supersession of reality, and not just walking in those same expectation patterns of previous ancestors. Let me just make sure if I got all of my things. Yeah, so ethics. Am I allowed to be here doing this? I'm allowed to be here doing this because I'm playing my music, I'm vibrating your strings sympathetically, and I'm also being affected by other musicians. Like, I send out stuff to you, you send out stuff back to me. It's a two-way street. It seems pretty fair. And I'm trying to get across the idea of interdimensional ethics. And I want to do one more screen share before I go to the things. I want to show this to you. Wait. So there's actually a couple of things I want to show. Okay, let me clear things out. We already looked at this. We already looked at this. This is one that I want to show you. This is what it looks like when you have your DNA supercoiled at a higher level. So in the supplemental homework videos, you'll see the whole video about supercoiling. It takes you on a journey from simplification into the most complex levels of supercoiling. At a certain point, you have many tori stacked up in like this, and then you have the flying rainbow lasagna that you can vibrate in this way. So you can do flying rainbow lasagna in the split apart V, and also in these stacked up vibrating tori. Now here, this is an example of supercoiling that comes from a scientific paper, and you can see there are these different loops that are kind of woven or crocheted together, and that they all converge and they make a center loop. So this is the idea of like, it can be even more complex than just a loop or a hula hoop, or something that is circular like that. We can have many circular presences woven together. And this one also shows you, this is more evidences of supercoiling. And this one, where I'm scribbling my cursor, it says toroid left-handed coiling. So you can get an idea of, as the threads of your DNA start to be coiled together, they make these donut or toroidal structures. All right, this is what I want to show you. So I have to bring this up because there are some, sometimes it bothers me when I see something erroneous. And sometimes I see this meme that goes around that says, this is a cross-section of DNA, and it shows the flower of life. And so the flower of life is based on patterns of 6, and that is what happens when you hold this 8-fold pattern in just the right orientation so that you can see the 6 radial spokes, but holding it up to the camera in just the right way. Here, hold on a second. Oh, that's pretty good. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 6 radial spokes, which of course leaves out 7 and 8 that I'm holding behind me here. But the idea of, that flat cross section. So a lot of these memes, they show the flat cross section that is the flower of life, and it says this is a cross section of DNA. And I always correct people not to be like some kind of a grammar Nazi or something like that, but that is not accurate. These 2 images here are accurate cross sections of what DNA actually looks like. So if I just get can you annotate? Get the little thing. Sometimes it doesn't come up when I want it to. It doesn't come up when I want it to. I wish it would. Well, anyway, so you have this coiling, and the flower of life is based on 6 spokes. This is based on 10. Here, I'll count around with you. Here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are 10, if it was a clock, it would be a clock that has only 10 o'clock. It doesn't go up to 12 o'clock, but it's not a clock that has only 6 hours in it. And if I were to show you this one, you'll see this, more accurately too. Scoop it on over. Yeah. So this one is an actual photograph from a scanning electron microscope. So you can see that it is not a flower of life at the center there, but that's what it actually looks like. And this matters because you are becoming virtuosos. It's just like if you get a guitar, you should actually know, like, how do you string the guitar? How is this actually, how did the little knots actually fit together in order to create your guitar? Oh, and here's another, this is a accurate drawing of the cross-section of DNA. And you can see these words, major and minor. Again, this is showing us the major and minor grooves. So you're not looking at this like a lateral long piece of skinny thread going across the screen like this. You're looking at this as if it's twisted up on a tunnel going down the screen away from you. Now I want to show you just something really cool that is from an app that's called Musical DNA. And I don't know if it is still downloadable. I would encourage everyone to get it. And there's another one that's related to this app by the same creator that is called Center Punch. So again, I'm showing you with the cursor. Musical DNA is the name of this one, and Center Punch is the name of the other one. It's kind of like a game, but they're a couple of years old. I don't know if it's still there. So I took these screenshots. The idea of musical DNA is that instead of arranging the notes on a scale, and this is really more of the level 2 material, in a linear fashion, like, going across your screen, that's how the way musical notation happens now. You have a staff, right? Like five lines, and they go across your screen like this, and you have little black dots that go up and down the staff that tell you where the notes are. But musical DNA asks us to envision the notes of the scale like a clock face, with, C, D, E, F, G, A, B going around like this. And what you're looking at over here, this, like, for example, this triangular shape is what happens the shape that happens when you put together 3 notes in a chord. So we're looking, in that view, we're looking down the tunnel of DNA that's spiraling away from us. And in the view that is to the right on your screen, you can see now I've shifted that tunnel of DNA so that you can look like you're looking from the side, and you can see how that triangular structure relates to the other notes, the other chords that came before it in the song. So it might have been, this might have been the previous chord, right? And then this might have been the second chord that we're looking at from the front. I bring this up because these are generations. What we're looking at here are DNA, music. We can use the understanding of DNA to understand generations. This would be your parents' generation, the coil that is directly behind you in this song. They played this music to you, and that's their music, but then you're not supposed to play the same exact music as them. You're supposed to develop the chord and bring it into your present generation. And all of this, if you were to look down the tunnel of time that is represented by your DNA, you're the most recent slice. And as you look down the tunnel, you are looking into deep antiquity, and you're looking down into the music that comes from your ancient ancestors. That's like millions of years ago, but that exists as part of the song of who you are. So this is just a little, bit of a visual representation so that you can understand the connection to DNA. And we'll do more music and harmonics in level 2. Let me finally get to questions and comments. Let me do this, and thank you very much for letting me roll along on my presentation and now get to all of this. Fizz, good to see you, man. Oh, this is you spoke to me privately here, so I hope that I can I speak this out loud? Yes. Oh, good. Yes, you can. Okay. So Pop Fizz, awesome. Thank you for tuning in. Good to see you. Says, last week, Channeler Jay-Z Knight said in her first interview in decades that she has had 2 DNA reports made, one for her and one for Ramtha. I don't know who Ramtha is, but interesting. Apparently, the person that she channels. Apparently, the 2 readings are completely different. One is XX, one is XY. One traces back to European ancestry, the other to Native American and another ethnicity. Upshot, DNA is completely plastic. Yes, yes, yes. DNA is the vibrating strings on your guitar. And these strings can play lots of different songs. They can play the songs of European ancestry. They can play the songs of Native American ancestry. And DNA, instead of using the analogy of strings, I should say melodies. Your DNA plays melodies. That's one melody that your DNA can play. The same exact vibrating strings can play something completely different. That's a completely different melody. So we didn't have to change the formation of the strings. However, those strings can play different vibrations. And as I don't know if I was speaking about it in this class, but the idea of, the consciousness invaders, they were not clank, clank metal spaceship. It's not like they flew here in a spaceship, got out on the front lawn of the White House and said, take me to your leader. We are here to invade. What they did was they put their ugly music into the beautiful DNA music that we're supposed to be playing. It was like a rape or a forceful injection of a vibration or a frequency that did not belong here, okay? So the rectification also happens through understanding frequency. Joelle says, man, I cried inside when I first heard of a woman doing that. We were talking about preventative mastectomy. It's so stupid and so sad. Completely agree, because there are also many lifestyle and dietary changes. So part of the thought structure of fatalism, when someone says something is written in your genes, it is fated to happen to you, that does not bring into account any of the life circumstances that create the possibility for disease. What you ate and what you drank and what you smoked and what you did, and did you work at a job you hate, and were you married to someone that you didn't love, were your children burdensome to you, all of that relates to the expression of disease. So yeah, it's not just a question of whether it is written in your DNA, it is really a question of what is what potential in your DNA is actually manifested or made real into reality. Joelle says, Aurora, how does the genetic degradation relate to the destruction of Tiamat, or what the asteroid belt used to be? Was this degradation more recent than what we were before this Earth? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, great question. So the planet that it used to be orbiting between Mars and Jupiter, this is actually relates to level 2. You know something? Let me wait, and let me do that for level 2, because level 1 is going to run so long. So Joelle, please bookmark that, and I will return back to you. Okay, good. Good. Thank you. Okay, so Jackie, I hope that I'm saying it right. Jackie is asking, is this a black hole in the center? This is the convergence point. So you are new to the class, so you're still learning the words that I use to describe things. This is the 0th dimension. It is also infinity. It's the convergence point of all timelines. It is the center of the torus, or the tor of the torus, the donut hole. And yes, it would be analogous to science's definition of a black hole, but science describes a black hole as the place where all of the rules of physics and the rules of the physical world break down, an infinite stretching of the fabric of space and time. And in that way, I can overlap. Much of that definition works with my definition and understanding. It's also a stretching of the fabric of space, time, and consciousness. So if you could imagine, this is a stretchy sphere of space, time, and consciousness, and God's fingers dimple that sphere in these various vectors, and all of these fingers converge in one place. And that convergence point is both the source of energy and information and consciousness, and also the destination, that we emerge from there into reality and circulate back to there. And that this whole journey of circulating back is, what we're doing right now. Joelle says, Aurora, do you need to imagine the FRL in your DNA, or can you do it by itself? When you do the flying rainbow lasagna, you do not have to imagine every single one of the trillions of your cells doing their little tiny flying rainbow lasagna dance. You don't have to use your powers of visualization down to that scale. Just like, let's say you're eating a delicious sandwich. You're like, You're eating on a macroscopic level. Technically, all of the sandwich ingredients are going to go into all of the little cells of your body. But you don't have to envision all of the little cells of your body eating little tiny miniature sandwiches, all the way on down the line. You just have to focus on your mouth and your hands and your tummy, doing your work at the macroscopic level. Same thing with flying rainbow lasagna. When you do this, and as I said, don't be frustrated with this presentation of this week. This is like as much as I can cram into you and digest, and then we'll do the how-to lessons. This is the what lesson. But I'm sorry, I don't want to lose my train of thought here. When you start to do this envisionment, you nearly only need to envision your giant macroscopic self doing this transformation, transforming from Torus into lasagna. And just like when I do the Merkaba, I'm envisioning it on a big giant level, a pyramid surrounding my whole physical body. And that, of course, surrounds all of my little tiny cells. So you just need to focus on the big picture version of yourself, knowing that as you do that, you're dancing on an inner cellular level. So this is also big too. For many years, I didn't actually show people how I do the dance. And I'm not just being coy. It's a private thing. It's a spiritual thing. It's not something to be commodified, like a sexy dancing video. It's not like that type of thing. And also a big part of it is, it's about the embodiment of a feeling. When you do this dance, the most important thing is not how you appear to other people. Like when you dance like a ballerina, what matters the most is how the audience views you, not what you feel like inside. Because ballerinas, their feet hurt a lot. And they might be looking very beautiful, but they're like, ow, my toe really hurts. So when you do the flying rainbow lasagna dance, it's the opposite of that. It is not caring about how perfect your form is to the viewer. It's about the feeling that you have inside. So some students do their dance sitting almost completely still. Like they might sit, with their legs crossed or in meditation, and they are you're vibrating. The point is you're vibrating on a cellular level, and you're making music with your strings of your guitar. I vibrate on a cellular level, and I do it all the time. Like I'm doing it right now. And I also do it when I'm going to the grocery store or whatever. And I also do physical movements. And the physical movements are analogous to what is happening on a subcellular level. And so, when you see me do this, so I'll do a Merkaba movement, and then I also do some movements that are like this, that are kind of showing like the dancing that is going like this, some movements that are like this, and I might do different things with my two hands. I might do up, down with this hand, but side, side with this hand. This is what I'm trying to say, that you can rearrange the basic amino acids, A, T, C, G, into new and exciting. We've got 4 notes. What can you do with 4 notes? You can do a million things with 4 notes, especially if I can be like, well, this hand is doing this note, but this hand is doing this note. And so you can do this way, and you can switch, and you can do this way. And then so the basic movements are, there's up, down, side, side, in, out, and then end over end, end over end, end over end. And the whole time that we've got those movements going, we've got it spinning like this. So in those basic movements, you can make all sorts of wonderful combinations, and you can also do them backwards. So it's just like, you can 2 steps forward in the dance, 2 steps backward in the dance, step to the side, step to the other side. You can come up with an infinite number of new combinations in this dance. And so we'll talk just very briefly about this. So the invaders to our DNA and the invaders to our planet, the consciousness invaders, They come from a group of space races that is reliant upon technology. It's not fun, happy technology in any way. It's based upon or run with trapped and victimized consciousness. And it is also based in predictive patterns. There's not creativity in there. So their whole technology and approach to reality is kind of like, if you can imagine a musician who cannot write a new song, but has gone to the conservatory and has memorized everything by Mozart, everything by Bach, everything by Beethoven, knows all of those patterns perfectly. But if you just give them the computer, the piano keyboard, like just make something new that you've never heard before, nothing. They can't do it. And to contrast that with you and I, we are juicy, creative beings. We're jazzy. We can do whatever. I might not know crap. I might not know any of these patterns. I might not have anything memorized. That doesn't freaking matter, because what matters, what really is valuable in this level of reality, is the capacity to innovate. Every time you do the flying rainbow lasagna, and also I'll just re-emphasize this, it is a cumulative dance. Just like painting a painting. I mean, I don't paint a painting in one day, and I don't think it's fair to expect yourself to. So let's say traditional oil painting. You know, you do the basic drawing, you do an underpainting. That's very general. And then you let it dry. And then you go back the next day and you start to add in another layer that brings forth more details. Then you let it dry. You might have to let it dry for a couple of days. Then you come back, you got to stand back, you got to look at it, you got to squint. Usually squint, smoke, stare at it, drink coffee, and you're like, oh, now it's time for me to add the next layer. And with each new layer, you refine the image until eventually, you have your perfected masterpiece. That is what flying rainbow lasagna is like. We're rearranging the Rubik's Cube of your DNA. You don't have to do it all in one day. I think that's very unfair expectation on yourself to have to carry that burden. So what you do? Do your dance. Rearrange, do the first layer, do the underpainting. And also when you start if you're a visual artist, start a painting, you do the underpainting, you do the drawing, and then you look at it, you're like, no, that's all mixed up. That's not right. We got to move. This part has to get moved over here. This part needs to be an inch lower. This nose isn't right. And that's the part of the painting when it's like you can rearrange things. You don't have to know everything to begin, is what I'm trying to say. The process itself is exploratory. You're allowed to innovate. You're allowed to do this. I don't have to give you permission. It doesn't come from me. I remind you of your own position of being a cosmic artist, that you were given this body, you were given these tools, you are given this paintbrush to paint reality. So you're allowed to do this. So you're allowed to do a rough sketch first. And sometimes what I'll do is a rough sketch on cheap paper. And then when I kind of figure out my ideas, then get a better piece of paper, or then actually get the canvas, because you don't want to screw it up at the beginning or whatever, and then begin to explore your ideas. And so again, don't be hemmed in by perfectionism. Like, don't be like, I don't even want to touch the piano because I'm going to make a wrong note. You're not going to be slapped down by the cosmos that's like, how dare you try to actually, rearrange your Rubik's Cube, like whack. No, that's not what is going to happen. You will be supported on every level, because what's happening is, it's like, if you see like a little kid and they sit down at the piano and they start to go like, you're like, yeah, do it. Do your thing. Play Mary Had a Little Lamb. So yeah, our initial efforts might be clumsy or ill-conceived, or you might not know what the heck you're doing, is what I'm trying to say. You don't have to know what you're doing. And also, this is your body. You have your own instrument. That's why you have it. You are allowed to play and experiment with your instrument. So again, this is not sheer effrontery to your parents or your ancestors or your religion or your culture or your planet or your government. You're allowed to do these things, even though those voices might pop up. Like, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are to be rearranging your DNA? You say like, well, this is my guitar. I get to play what I want to play on my guitar. And you might want to play songs that are very different than the songs of your ancestors. It doesn't mean that you will say like, oh, I don't like the color of my skin. I want to change my skin to look different than my ancestors. It might not be like that. It might be like saying, I want to have a different relationship to resources than my ancestors had. Like, they were always starving, or they were always killing each other for resources. I want to have a different relationship to resources. Or I want to have a different relationship with God or cosmology, or ancestral guilt is a big one too. Basically, almost every single human ethnic group has experienced a genocide at some point. And the ancestors will say, you must carry the pain of our genocide, otherwise it is a affront, insult to everything that we went through. And what each one of us can do is say, in this body, in this generation, no, I don't want to keep on playing those songs. On my guitar of this body, I don't want to have to keep on playing the song of the Armenian genocide, or the song of the Irish genocide, or the song of the Jewish genocide, or the Black genocide, or the Black diaspora, or the everybody who was killed in Nepal, or everybody who was killed in Indonesia, like everybody who was killed in Australia. These are all very sad songs. You do not have to continually play those songs, and it is not an insult to the pain of those former aspects of self. If I went back to that, go back to that picture, there, just go back to the picture. That's the spiral going back in time. That's songs from a long time ago. Those traumatic songs are music like this from a long time ago, and you don't have to keep on playing those songs. And that's not insulting to those sad times in the past. It's actually like how we get into better times. Oh, this is a beautiful, Joelle says, thank you. That's really helpful. I've always imagined just the FRL in my mind instead of around my body, so that makes sense. Yes. And I'll also say there is not a wrong way to do it. You know, someone once asked me, if I envision the Merkaba, should I envision it just around my pineal gland, or should I envision it around my head, or should I envision it around my whole body? And I want to be like, you're not going to do it the wrong way. You can envision it all three. Or whichever way feels the right way to you. So yeah, if you want to envision a tiny little FRL inside of your brain, you can do that. Or if you want to imagine a body-sized one, like you're jumping up and down on the whole planet, you can envision that one, and everything else in between. Because again, like I want to give you a piano. Here, have a piano, but I don't want to tell you how to play or what to play, because I truly believe in each one of you. Like you're like Jimi Hendrix. You know, Jimi Hendrix, I love this guy, because he like got an electric guitar and just figured it on out, and was like, he made sounds that were not like what anybody else made sounds of. No one sat down with him and said, Mr. Hendrix, this is how you play with feedback. Like he figured it out. So guys, I just want to give you instruments. I just want to give you Flying Rainbow Lasagna and encourage you to your own levels of virtuosity and self-exploration, because I'm certain that you will come up with things that are way beyond what anybody could possibly dictate to you. And Sandy's making a wonderful comment, and thank you, and it's lovely to see you, and I know you're in Australia. I don't even know what time it is down there. Sandy says, we are part of the fractal. That is exactly right. So the idea of a fractal is that you have a pattern that is the whole, just kind of like these patterns that I paint. And then within that larger whole, there are tiny self-similar subsets. So if you use this image as an example, there's the larger four-lobed shape, right? And then inside of that, there's smaller four-lobed shapes, smaller ones, until you get down to the little tiny violet-shaped ones, like the nested Matryoshka dolls from Ukraine. The larger genetic reality, the larger consciousness reality gets subdivided into each one of us, and we are members of the fractal tiny reality. But that also means that what we do on this little smaller level, what happens at this little level of violet here, radiates outward. The tiniest little doll inside of all of those dolls is actually incredibly powerful, and that's us here on Earth. Little tiny dolls, dance your heart out. We are totally powerful. Joelle says, maybe this is why so much of our education on this planet is memorization and regurgitation. Yes, yes, thank you, and I hug you through the screen. She says, these aliens are trying to give us their mind. That is absolutely accurate. Yes, you're wonderfully insightful. She says, and how much has their mind changed our DNA? Their mind has literally taken our DNA, which should be like the most amazing, expansive, like a ballerina, like an ice skater, like, you know, imagine like these beautiful, graceful gestures, and turned us into like, you know, hinky jinky, and like maybe you have an arm falling off, and like, you know, you have to like walk around on your knees or crawl on your knees. That's what they did. That their mind, their consciousness degraded our physicality and degraded even the way that we can move through time. We're supposed to, instead, so what most people do when they move through time, they wake up in the morning and they're like, oh, I feel horrible. I gotta drink some coffee. I gotta drive to my horrible, stupid job. I hate everybody. And, you know, they're sending out that horrible type of music. And what we're supposed to do is be like, every morning you wake up, look at the way it was when you were a little child. If you had a good childhood, you know, you wake up in the morning, you're excited. and you feel wonderful, and you're like, oh, I can't wait to do what adventures we're going to have today. We're going to do something new. I'm going to learn something new. I'm going to meet people. We're going to go places. And then, you know, you're sending out music that's more like you're doing cool, fun stuff. So yeah, and you know, the music that we send out affects the people around us. So if you're a toil and drudgery, drinking your coffee, hating everyone, you're sending out that music to the world. And that is rewarded in this time and place, which is a very inverted world. Be like, yes, be diminished and unfulfilled, and send out that music to everyone else. And they will also be crappy. Like, be crappy together. And that's not what we're supposed to be. Pedro says, I visualize one large FRL for my body and one tiny FRL for each cell. Very beautiful. I do the same for the Merkaba, and I go the other way. One bigger for Earth and one even bigger for the whole universe. Beautiful. And if you can maintain, if you're like good, if you can play with both hands and keep the melody and the rhythm going, do it. And if you're like Pedro's not a beginner, if you are a beginner, don't worry. If you only want to play with one hand, or if you're just going to play one note at a time, you can do that too. So master the simple, then add more on top and more on top and more on top. So this has been a very long level 1, but I have wonderful fun stuff to do for level 2. So let me stop the recording. Everyone's going to have a little break. I'm going to get the equipment set up, and then we'll return for level 2. Thank you so much, everyone.